Government business.
Government business is now the order of the day.
Order number 6, sir. In the name of the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, to move the second reading of the Immigration Amendment Bill 2019.
Honourable Member for St. James North.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. The Immigration Automated Passport Control Kiosk Bill 2019, which is before this Honourable Parliament today. In fact, an amendment to the Immigration Act represents the third amendment to the Immigration Act, which we are requesting this Parliament to make within the last 6 weeks. You would recall, of course, Mr. Speaker, as all honourable members would as well, that last month we would have brought to this Parliament and secured the approval of honourable members of the bill relating to advanced passenger information systems to enhance the border security of our country, whereby information on persons travelling to and, in fact, departing from Barbados would be supplied to the relevant authorities no less than 40 minutes before the departure of the flight. And of course, border security, we are all aware, sir, is of paramount importance in today's age as we seek to wrestle criminal activity to the ground, and where we will succeed in so doing, sir. We then brought an amendment to the Immigration Act in terms of minimizing the category of prohibited persons who legislatively could be denied entry into Barbados, something that was long overdue. As we said, sir, we're on our statute book up to last month. An immigration officer could, if they felt foolish enough to do so, could, for example, have prohibited a person with a disability, immobility, visually impaired person from travelling, and even though, of course, factually that might not happen, so the fact is that it was still on the legislative books. And this process here today, sir, is to amend the Immigration Act to bring into legislative effect the utilization of kiosks, sir, and to provide legislative recourse for the removal of or the replacement of the present day ED forms, which we all have to sign and which everyone travelling to Barbados is given prior to arrival in Barbados, whether on the plane or on arrival at the airport, to fill out. So the basis of the ED forms that, as of now, everyone travelling to Barbados is required to fill out, complete, and hand to an immigration officer is a 2007 amendment to the regulations of the Immigration Act, statutory instrument 2007 number 28, and that, as I said, sir, is required for entry into Barbados. We know it, sir. It requires some information that, quite frankly, is absolutely unnecessary. I mean, you're a Barbadian citizen or permanent resident. The authorities, immigration authorities, can't stop you from entering. In the case, of course, you're born in Barbados, your navel stringberry here, but yet you have to fill out, as part of that ED form, for example, where you reside. Well, that information is known, sir, or where you're going to live. I mean, why should the state be intruding into that to know where you're going to now live? your passport number, sir, is filled out, as you know, sir, and where the passport was issued and the date it was issued, and if you're a Barbadian. All of this information, sir, is now captured and available to the immigration authorities and other relevant authorities in Barbados due to our connection with the Joint Regional Communications Center, which is a regional border security authority and which has access to this information. So therefore, this information is available to the Barbadian authorities and can be acquired, and indeed is acquired at will on any traveller to and from Barbados. And that was what the first amendment to the Immigration Act, which I spoke of just now, which was brought last month, was about. So it is redundant and repetitive to continue with these ED forms, just duplicating information, just creating space, because these ED forms, hundreds of thousands of them, sir, have to be stored somewhere. And we're trying to move towards e-government, towards paperless society and administration. And this is one of the thrusts of this administration's effort to modernize Barbados and to bring into the third decade of the 21st century an ease of doing business, not only for the citizens of Barbados and the residents of Barbados, but for those who visit our country. Because, of course, tourism is still our #1 foreign exchange earner. And with the efforts, of course, of the Honourable Member for St. James Central, the Minister of Tourism, we are already improving our tourist product in many ways. So this whole process ties into that whole context where we are making life easier for all those, whether local citizens, tourists, who happen to be in Barbados and who, in this specific case, arrive in Barbados. It is within this context, sir, that we last week brought the Town and Country Planning Amendment Act. Debate opened by, of course, the Honourable Prime Minister, and the hard work for that act grounded by the significant efforts of the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central, who has more than proved her worth in the Cabinet and Government of Barbados, sir. It is within that context that we are working on easing the process to renew driver's licenses. The Honourable Members for Christchurch West and St. Lucie giving ministerial leadership to that process. It is within that process, sir, that we are looking to vastly limit the time it takes to obtain police certificates of character and accident reports. Way too long at the present time, sir, and the Honourable Member in the other place, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, who so ably spoke about this process, in fact, at my branch meeting 2 evenings ago, looking to digitalize this process and remove the current situation where you have to search through tens of thousands, I think it is about 65,000 records, paper records, to see if someone has a clean police certificate of character. And some things, sir, that, as we know, and as you, sir, as a leading criminal lawyer in this country knows about 85% of persons require to get a job, and by the time they get the certificate, some weeks after the job gone through the headers in some cases, in most cases probably. This is part of that process, sir. E-government, digitalization of government, ease in business, using information technology, using the technology to improve the quality and the speed of delivery of high-demand services, as page 33 of the 2018 manifesto of the Barbados Labour Party so eloquently enunciates. The practical aspect of this is that 17 kiosks were purchased by the previous administration, so we came and found them. 16 are functional at the present time. It is our intention, sir, when financial resources, as soon as financial resources allow, to get more kiosks, sir, because with our growing tourism market and arrivals and of course increased travels, we anticipate that the 17 that are there would not be adequate enough in the long term, sir. But yes, the previous administration brought these kiosks, but as was their norm, sir, did nothing to bring them into effect. So they were there from, I believe, 2017, sitting down at the airport, taking up space. And as usual, the government of the 10 lost years did nothing about it, even though it was clear that the whole world, both developed world and developing world, was moving towards the process of automated entry on arrival in Barbados of passengers, and doing away with this tremendous paper wastage which marks the present situation in our country, which we are seeking to remove starting today by this in terms of legislation, sir. The machines, as I said, full name automated passport control kiosks, which we will call kiosks. And the process is that a passenger on arrival will approach this kiosk, would put in their passport, and a picture would be taken. You will face the kiosk, a frontal and full picture of your facial image would be taken to identify you for obvious purposes. Then the kiosk would prompt you to answer some questions, a couple questions, sir, and in real time provide answers to that. Split seconds, sir. They would have the answers and would produce 2 receipts. In fact, for the immigration purposes, 1 receipt, defined in the Act as an entry receipt. That receipt would either bear the letters PG, in other words, pass granted or permission granted, which means that entry has been granted by the passenger into the country, or X, in which case, Mr. Speaker, the passenger would be required to go to an immigration officer and be further examined to see why they have an X. Now, they may very well just have an X because of a slight defect in the system. It may very well not mean that they are someone on whom an alert has come up in terms of not being a desirable person to enter Barbados. So it may be I think most kiosks in the world are not 100% foolproof, and it is estimated that maybe in terms of 15% of the X's, may be nothing to worry about at all. And obviously we will work towards minimizing that percentage as much as possible, realizing, of course, that this process is still new. But once you get a PG, sir, it means, as I said, that your entry is permitted. Nothing has been found on you in terms of risk or negative border security. And you go and you hand the immigration entry receipt to the immigration officer. And we want to be sure, sir, that the immigration officer now, sir, is not going to waste time and duplicate an effort that has already been carried out and undertaken by the kiosk. The immigration officer, sir, is merely to look at you, look at the photo which the kiosk has taken and which is on the entry receipt, ensure that it is the same person, and when they see PG, let the person through to enter into the baggage clearance section of the arrival area so that they could collect the baggage and then move towards customs. Immigration will understand, sir, that they aren't to waste time. The effort has already been done. The kiosk has given all the information. There's to be no searching the passport, no to look at the passport information, wasting time, sir. The reality of the situation is that for a tourist, the point of contact in Barbados at the airport is their first point of contact. And we all know that first impressions count a lot, sir. That's a fact of the matter. Some people don't get a chance to create a second impression. And a first impression of a tourist who is part of the major foreign exchange prop of Barbados, part of the major plank of the economic and consequentially social development of Barbadians, has to be the airport, is in fact the airport. And so the typical tourist coming from England, North America, England, United Kingdom still constitutes our major tourist market. I believe, 37% of our tourists annually come from United Kingdom. We know that's an 8-hour flight. After 8 hours in a plane, sir, many of us in here, including you, sir, have traveled on, 12-hour flights. It is true, 13 hours, in some cases 11 and a half, but 8 hours is still a lengthy flight. 8-hour flight from United Kingdom. The length of it may be tempered by the tourists, whether they're a first-time visitor or they've come here 70 times, like many tourists who are here right now, as we speak, out of the gloomy winter of their country. But it may be tempered by the realization that they're coming to Barbados, the gem of the Caribbean, sir. But still, 8 hours is 8 hours. And after you're on a flight for 8 hours, you want to get off the flight, you want to get out the airport, you want to go on the beach, you want to go and drink some Bajan rum, you want to start enjoying your vacation. You don't want to be held up at an airport more than is necessary, sir. And this is all part of that process. Not only, though, for the tourists, sir, but for our own people as well. The kiosk, as I said, sir, scans the passport, takes the photo, prompts the passenger to respond honestly, sir, to the series of questions, verifying biographic and flight information. This is all biometrics, sir. And as I said, security, sir, has not been compromised in this process. We have ensured that the security of Barbados, especially at this time, is not being compromised by this process. So there's no need to worry about that. And once, as I said, the entry receipt produces PG, handed to the immigration officer, who verifies that the person handing him the receipt is the same person whose photo is on the receipt. The processing of the passenger's entry into Barbados is complete. So this whole process started in August last year with a pilot project. Pilot project ran for about 3 months, just from around crop over time, of course, when we would have had an influx of visitors, until about September, October. Teething problems have been ironed out, sir, and I first want to give tremendous credit to the Honourable Prime Minister for driving this process, for insisting, sir, that we get where we are today in terms of being able to bring to Parliament a bill to legislatively bring into effect this process. Prime Minister has been adamant that this has to be done during this tourist season. We can't be left behind, sir. We have to move on. As a country, as a nation, we have had to come from virtual ground, sir, where we were basically in May last year, when the political party of which I am a proud member took over the administration of this country, a bankrupt economy, challenges on all fronts, economically, socially, all fronts, sewerage, buses, garbage trucks, we tackling all, sir. Lack of foreign exchange, reserves, high debt. We've had to tackle all fronts, sir, and all simultaneously. And we have not recoiled from doing so. And this is one of the areas that is we found as paramount importance. The Prime Minister insisted on us taking this process. I want to give credit, sir, to the technocrats, the public servants who have enabled us to be where we are today, sir. The immigration department, the management of it, both at headquarters, at the airport, the tourism officials, sir, both in the ministry itself and the tourism authority, and led in this case, as I said before, by the Honourable Minister of Tourism, the member for St. James Central, the officials of the Grantley Adams Airport, and also the stakeholders at the airport, those with an interest in for example, seeing the passengers who make use of the executive services of the airport through. The customs officials, the customs department were involved. We've had a series of meetings on this issue to iron out the teething problems arising, which we, of course, would have discovered from the pilot project. All of these officials have to take credit in this process where we are today. We've had reports on it. Of course, we were able to look at those reports and address them. And I'm not saying, sir, that we have reached Olympus, sir. There will still be some teething problems, as I'm sure that every reasonable person would expect. But coming out of the pilot project, we have to make a start legislatively. All persons will be eligible to utilize the kiosk, with the exception of unaccompanied minors, and minors is defined in the bill in the regulations which will be made subsequent to the passage of this bill, minors is defined as an individual under 19 years old. And that is standard in terms of best practice in the world, that a minor traveling by themselves will still have to approach and be checked in by an immigration officer, sir. And I mean, that makes common sense, sir, because I mean, the minor is not an adult, and therefore we want to verify that everything is okay, sir. Other persons who will not be able to use the kiosk, again, understandably, would be those whose passport can't be read by the kiosk. Now, my understanding, sir, is that every Barbadian who has a passport would have a passport that is readable by the kiosk, because changes started to be made from 2004, when the Barbados Labour Party was last in government, in terms of giving Barbadians on application for a passport that would be readable by this kiosk, because the world was moving towards that process. I'm also informed, sir, that citizens of virtually every other country in the world should have a passport that is readable by the kiosk, because by virtue of an international agreement under the IATA, sir, countries from, I believe it might have been around 2010, had to move towards giving their citizens machine-readable passports. If that had not yet been done previously, as I said, Barbados, for example, had been doing since the year 2004. And therefore, everyone should be eligible to use the kiosks. There may be occasions, sir, and let's be practical, because sometimes now, at this time of the year, high winter season, 4 or 5 big jets on the tarmac at the same time at Grantley Adams on a Saturday afternoon. And the multitude of passengers, therefore, arriving in Barbados, these big jets holding, 300 passengers almost. I mean, not everyone may be able, when the airport is at full capacity in terms of arrival of passengers, to use the kiosk, because, as I said, sir, we only have 16 there that are functioning. So they would, under those circumstances, still be the great possibility, indeed probability, that some passengers would have to see some immigration officers to be checked in, sir. That is the reality of the situation. As I said, sir, we intend to acquire more kiosks as soon as finances allow. We know, sir, that this government has, more than any other government in the past, has had to juggle the financial resources. In fact, on a daily basis, the Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for Christchurch, East Central, sir, being frontal in that exercise, that every passenger coming to Barbados will be able practically to utilize the kiosk. You might, for purposes still of being able to get out as fast as possible, some may still have, under those circumstances that I described, to have to go to an immigration officer. But the fact is that on the majority of occasions, flights arriving in Barbados, the morning flights, which, because most passengers arrive in the afternoon, not the morning, so all the morning arrivals should be able to utilize the kiosk. So by simplifying this process, as I said, there will be a tremendous ease in terms of the ability at the present time as well, replacing all Barbadian passports into Canada easily. Some would say it's because Canada, although one of the largest countries in the world, I believe maybe the fourth or fifth largest country in the world, only has a population of second largest country in the world. Minister, the honourable member for Christchurch West, who is very familiar with Canada, has said, and yes, he's correct. Second largest in the world. It only has a population of about 35 million odd, and therefore needs people. So some might say that is as a result of the policy. That is why they have this policy, but the fact is that they do have it. And we've taken the Canadian model as a guide here. Additionally, sir, we have taken the decision that only those passengers entering Barbados who require their passport to be stamped for whatever purpose would have their passport stamped by immigration. And so again, this is how it is moving. Jamaica already has that in place, passports not stamped. Canada as well no longer stamps passports. If in Canada, if a passport is required in the traveller's passport as proof of entry, this must be requested from a border services officer after completing the kiosk transaction. And that is what we're moving towards. I mean, some of us have traveled to countries, let's face it, Cuba, let's give an example, where we may have determined that we don't need a stamp in our passport, and we know the reason why, sir. So that doesn't mean we haven't been to Cuba, sir. We've been. Certainly I have been. So there's no magic in a stamp in your passport. The information that you have entered Barbados, whether as a citizen, resident, or tourist, non-resident, is there in the system. And if you want a record at any time of whether you entered into Barbados, or how many times you entered into Barbados, or what date you entered into Barbados, you could get that easily from the immigration and other authorities. If the authorities need, the authorities obviously have the record of your entry. And again, I mean, if we were to still continue with the existing procedure that your passport stamp, again, that's going to take up time, sir. That is redundant, repetitive, and we're looking to make entry into Barbados easier for you. The regulations, sir, will give legislative force to what is defined in the regulations as a facilitation officer, and who will be available to assist an individual in their use of the kiosk if needs be, sir. I mean, there may be some elderly people who may not be familiar with a kiosk, they may not be comfortable with it, and facilitation officers, sir, whatever, customer service, reps, whatever you may wish to call them, but as I said in the bill, in the regulation defined as facilitation officers, will be there to assist you. These individuals are employed by the airport, sir. Some are in place already. I believe that it is the intention of the airport to employ even more as this procedure gets into full effect. In addition to this, we are not looking at this in a vacuum. In addition to this, the Cabinet of Barbados has agreed that the immigration officials will be removed from the departure hall at the airport as of February the 1st this year. This has been tried on 2 previous occasions, sir. And on both occasions, immigration officials were reinstated there. And so I'm not being partisan, political, sir, as I'm accused of a lot of cases, sir. Both administrations previously have tried this, only to put immigration back in. We are confident, sir, that we can try this again because of the enhanced border security details that are now available and that have been put in place because of the APIS, the real-time transmission of information on each and every passenger that is now available to the authority of Barbados. And that is the main reason why immigration was restored in the past on the 2 previous occasions to the departure hall. But we believe, sir, that we can remove immigration from that process without any compromise of our border security. So, and the public of Barbados can be fully satisfied that we will not compromise the security of our borders in any way, sir, as a government. But the fact of the matter is that, again, when there are many passengers departing from Barbados, both citizens of Barbados, tourists, on some occasions, Saturday afternoons, probably at this time of the year in December, whatever, tourist winter season, in the northern world, that there is a backup of people after they have booked in now to get into the departure lounge to board, getting ready to board the airport, their aircraft. Because you have customs, as we know, sir. Well, first you have the guard just outside the door before you enter the departure hall. That guard employed by the airport, sir. And that guard is checking your passports to ensure that the picture on the passport is the person who is presenting the passport to the guard. And then, of course, as of now, sir, as I said, we have decided to remove it. You have the immigration officials inside, 3 or 4 booths, 3 or so immigration officials there at one time, depending on how full the departure hall is, and people now looking to board. And then, as you know, sir, there's the security check there with the inspection of the baggage that you're carrying on the plane. So 3 layers. And of necessity, sir, with one of the layers there's a backup, long line. I mean, people, some of whom need to board the flight because the flight can take off soon. You know, you're getting nervous. All of this could negatively impact on your experience in Barbados, even though you've had a great time. And therefore, Cabinet has decided to remove one of the layers, sir. And we are satisfied that this can be done, as I said now for the 3rd time, by an administration. But we're satisfied that the border security issues will still be in place, because we still have, of course, immigration officials at the airport. We have police officials there. If it is picked up by the APIS that there is a passenger who is suspect seeking to board, the information has been passed on, sir, in real time, from the time that passenger books in to the relevant authorities, who can pick up, question, delay the person, whatever. And we therefore look forward to this process, sir. Once this bill, sir, is passed, and we wish to anticipate that, of course, by both houses of Parliament. There are regulations which will need to be, of course, amended as well, sir. Under Section 31 of the Immigration Act, the Minister of Immigration has the authority to make regulations which are subject to negative resolution, sir, so they would not have to be debated in this Parliament. Cabinet has already approved those regulations, sir. In addition to that, the customs regulations would need to be amended to give effect to the second receipt that is produced by the kiosk. As we know, sir, in addition to this ED form, which is presently handed to the immigration officials, which, as I said, compels you to give information that certainly as a Barbadian citizen is unnecessary and is not, the state already has it, but even so, I mean, the state doesn't have to know where an individual going to tonight if they're a Barbadian citizen. But the second receipt, we know that on the back of that ED form, there's a customs declaration form at present, sir, and that would have been made, in fact, under the customs regulations which first came into effect in 1963, and whereby under Provision 83, the owner of any baggage brought into a customs area shall immediately attend upon the proper officer and answer such questions as the officer may put to him. The owner shall make such declarations in writing, including a declaration in forms C23 or C24, as the case may be, relating to the baggage that they have. And so we therefore will be making the regulations subject to Cabinet's approval in the very near future, hopefully, sir, as part of this whole process, to remove the requirement for the passenger to fill out this customs declaration, because the kiosk is going to produce a second receipt as well, which will have information relating to customs and which the passenger will present to the customs officer in lieu of the present declaration form. We know that the declaration form at present, sir, mandates you to answer questions like if you're carrying, I believe, is over 10,000 Barbados dollars in cash, or if you're carrying drugs, if you have, I believe, over a certain amount of alcohol, if you have some kind of food products. We know the questions, sir. And again, we will move swiftly to ensure that the customs regulations are in place as well to legislatively legitimize utilization of the kiosk for the purposes of customs as well. So I said earlier that the removal of some immigration officers, because so many won't be required from the arrival hall, as well as the removal of immigration officers from the departure hall, will of necessity therefore free up immigration to do other aspects of their mandate. And we certainly, sir, look forward to immigration being in a position to more speedily process applications, sir. I'm not going to come here, so before this Parliament, and I spoke a bit about it last month as well in, I think, the first debate on the Immigration Amendment Act, that we have to find a way, and we are in the process of finding a way to speed up immigration in terms of processing of the various applications. It can be done. Once the will is there, sir, it can be done, and it will be done. Immigration, sir, and I praise them again, would have been part of the process of validating and giving effect to about 1,500 or 1,500 plus Ross University students and lecturers and other employees coming into Barbados, getting their visas, the student visas and work permits, etc., in a very short space of time, sir. It's miraculous. Many government departments came on deck to ensure that Ross University, which, as we have been hearing, will be, I think, 3% of our GDP or something, $65 million annually US, I believe, into the economy of Barbados. And immigration did its part in a short space of time in processing and completing and authorizing visas for these 1,500 plus students and even more officials and professors, etc., at the university. And that shows you, sir, that it can be done. We know, sir, as I said, that it takes too long, and we're freeing up of some immigration officials, sir, and with the processes that we are going through, with the help of the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology, as I said, ably led by the honourable member in Cabinet Minister in the other place. We're working on improving these systems. They have to be improved, sir. And I pointed out very recently, sir, that there is a case. I pointed out to the officials recently that there is a case, sir. It is not binding on the Barbados judicial situation, but I would contend that it is of persuasive authority. Case coming out of Antigua, judgment given in August 2016, Oliveira against the Attorney General of Antigua, where the Privy Council, it went to what is still, of course, the highest court for Antigua. Unfortunately, sir, and really and truly, we have to address this, sir. But as we know, the people of Antigua, and we have to, of course, the Antiguan government has to accept their verdict on the same day as the people of Grenada rejected the accession of their respective countries into the Caribbean Court of Justice. So the Privy Council still remains the highest court of Antigua and the OECS countries, with the exception of Dominica. But being a judgment of the Privy Council, sir, and Privy Council, as we all know, was at one time our highest court, I would want to suggest that this is still of persuasive authority, even though not binding on the Barbados authorities. But in this case, an individual who was married to an Antiguan citizen applied under constitutional provisions similar, sir, to those in our constitution for citizenship of the country. Because the Antiguan constitution says that a person who is married to a citizen of Antigua shall be entitled to citizenship of Antigua once they are not living apart from their spouse under a decree of a competent court or deed of separation. They can't get citizenship, sir, and in under 3 years, because the constitutional provision says that the marriage has to subsist for upwards of 3 years. And in fact, sir, the only difference is that our constitution prescribes a period, doesn't set a date, and that period, by policy, sir, is at present 3 years, sir. It will soon be before Cabinet, sir, because, as I said in the previous debates last month, we're working assiduously on immigration reform, sir, and it will soon be before Cabinet to decide whether that 3-year period is too long a period for someone who is married to a Barbadian to have to wait for citizenship. What it means, sir, you're married, sir. You got 1 or 2 children, you got a mortgage, you have 2 cats and a dog. I mean, sir, that is a genuine marriage, sir. I mean, we live in the real world. Well, there's nothing sham about that. That immigration should still be waiting 7 years to see whether it's a real marriage or not, sir. Why married 28 years now, the next month? So I understand what marriage is, sir. But that is a real marriage. What you're telling me, after 7 years, you're still looking to see whether it's sham marriage or not. And this is Barbados, sir, where everybody know everybody. Somebody who marries somebody, a Barbadian citizen, to get Barbados citizenship, you're going to know in a year or 2 that they're looking to trick the system. But don't let's know, delay and hinder the progress and quality of life of an individual who in a real marriage, sir, they got commitments, 2 children, mortgage, house, 2 cats and 3 dogs. So let's get real, sir. Let's get real. So the Privy Council, sir, in that case, because the Antiguan authorities, sir, played the fool, sir, and the person applied for citizenship and 2 years and all kind of thing afterwards, they gave the person an appointment to come in and see the officials over a year after the apply. And the Privy Council said that is unreasonable. I mean, you can't. The Constitution, the primary law of a country, determines that an individual is entitled to citizenship if they're married to an Antiguan after 3 years. And you can't be fooling around. The Privy Council told the Antiguan authorities, saying that you delaying giving them appointment. You put the appointment date to interview them over a year afterwards, and even then when you interview them you still don't get them citizenship. And the Privy Council found that the individual who applied for citizenship, the applicant, had been damaged, their constitutional rights had been breached, and that they were entitled to damages, sir. And quite frankly, my view would be that if such a case were to come to the Caribbean Court of Justice arising from Barbados, where after 7 years an individual who has applied for citizenship on the basis of marriage has not got that citizenship, the Caribbean Court of Justice may very well be minded to do the same against the government of Barbados, and the government paying out money again, just like how they had to do in Sanique Myrie case. So I know about that, sir, as long as I happen to be Minister of Immigration, sir. And therefore, we are in the process of getting a customer charter service, a customer charter of services by the Immigration Department, sir. As I said, as we get everything in place in terms of the technology to assist the Immigration Department, sir. But we're not waiting till then, we're moving towards this now, while we speak, that citizenship applications by Barbadians, sir, by descent. Let's take an example, sir. And you're either entitled to citizenship by descent or not, sir. In other words, your father or mother or both either born in Barbados or not, right? You have a birth certificate. Your birth certificate has on the name of your parents. We know, sir, that, and this was very unfortunate, but it was reality, that in all previous times, I mean, birth certificates, and I used to almost want to cry, had the name of mother, but no name of father, blank, like if you're only born by your mother, and we men didn't have any process in conception or birth. But the reality, sir, your citizenship by descent, that should cause no problem, sir. So citizenship by descent should not take a few months to determine whether the application should be approved or not. And we have to move towards 7 working days for that, sir. There may be some cases, sir, and I think that the immigration department now understands, sir, that they have to abide by the law, as all government departments. And you know, sir, I mean, we're aware of this. You know, some government departments sometimes give themselves more power than they have. We experienced that in the last administration by the Barbados Revenue Authority, where we had to fight them as a political party, sir, and the Bar Association came on board too. That at that time, I believe it was in 2014 or 2014, I believe it was, when that authority sought to tell you that you couldn't get a land tax certificate, which, as you know, sir, you require if you're selling property, that you couldn't get a land tax certificate unless you had paid up all your income taxes and your VAT and everything else. There was no legislative authority for that at that time, sir. They were acting, the Barbados Revenue Authority was acting ultra vires administrative law, sir. So our government departments have to understand that the law is the law, sir, and the law is made in these hallowed chambers, sir, as interpreted by the courts of Barbados, ending with the Caribbean Court of Justice. And therefore, if the Status of Children Act, sir, says that a man accepts that he is father of a child, and he swears an affidavit, as you know, sir, to say, I am the father of this child, or a court subsequently declares that he is the father of the child, or he goes and then, even though his name is not on the birth certificate initially, sir, subsequently he goes to the registry and says, Registrar, I am the father of this child, put my name on the birth certificate, sir. The Status of Children Act 1979, one of the revolutionary social pieces of legislation passed in these chambers under the political administration of the late Right Honourable Tom Adams, sir, determines that the man is father of the child by his own admission. So therefore, while an application by descent might be slightly held up because now you're verifying now that the birth certificate has been altered and now has the name on it, or that there's the court degree, or you might tell the person to bring the affidavit that you swear before the JP or the notary public to show that you are father. It can't take too much more than 7 working days. And of course, this is where all the documentation is in, sir. It's not that you're bringing in the documentation piecemeal. 7 working days after the immigration has all the documentation. Citizenship by marriage, sir. As I said, though, taking too long in most cases, sir. The aim is to move the processing of a citizenship by application once this prescribed period is passed, and once all the documentation is in, your marriage certificate, your birth certificate, whatever else, sir, within 4 weeks, sir. There's no reason why it should take so long. So all of this has to do with ease of doing business, because if somebody's status is not secure, the mind not fully settled, the on reside and work, they can't get promotion in the job probably because the status not secure. Some jobs maybe you might not even be able to be eligible for, sir. So all of this is part of what we have to do and lead as a country in getting matters in place, sir. Student visas, right now, I believe we commit to getting them in 7 working days. First time, sir. First time applications. Again, this is important, sir, because someone working in Barbados, they have their work permits, they're here legitimately, they need to be secure that their children know, or their child, is properly in place in a school. When the September comes, that school starting. So we can't be fooling around now on a student application visa, sir, which is so fundamental to the existence of an individual or family that is working here with permission. Work permits, sir, again, an issue. As of now, the Immigration Department tries to process and complete them. Once, as I said, everything is in place, all the documentation and information in a month, sir, and that will remain as is. Entry visas, sir. There are some countries, too many countries, I think we accept, sir, that Barbados requires citizens to still have visas to enter Barbados. And we are a tourist country, sir, so I know it is on the radar at the relevant authorities level to relook at that aspect of the number of countries that we require entry visas for. And right now, I believe it is 7 working days. We need to reduce that, sir, to 3 days, 72 hours. So these are all aspects that the Immigration Department is working on and that we have to improve, sir. There will be no excuses for not improving permanent residence. So where I think right now the process might take 6 months, sometimes more. We aim to bring that down to 4 weeks. As I said, we have to use the technology. There's still some ironing out of it in terms of digitalization. We all know that that this is a work in progress, the digitalization of government departments. But we will get there, sir, because all of this is part of the competitiveness of Barbados, and where we found ourselves in May last year on coming into office at number 133 out of 170 countries in the world in terms of ease of doing business. Now, in other words, in terms of difficulty of doing business, there were only 37 countries in the world that had been judged that it was more difficult to do business in Barbados. I mean, whether it was getting a permit for electricity or permission to build construction, to build a house or building infrastructure. I think it was taking 14 months on average for that. And of course, we brought legislation in here last week that will lessen that time period tremendously. But it can't be so difficult to do business in a country that seeks to be on the cutting edge of economic and social development, and to again punch above its weight in this world, and again become the leading developed country in the world, sir, and again aim for developed country status as we were doing the last time the Barbados Labour Party was in office. So these are initiatives that the Immigration Department is actively working on, sir. The legislation that we have brought today, as I said, would require some ironing out. It would most likely require some service agreements between immigration, customs, JRCC, maybe. Sorry, not JRCC, sir. We already have that. The Grantley Adams Airport, of course, where the kiosks are installed, and the relevant authorities will look at that assiduously. We have ensured that the JRCC will supply to the tourism stakeholders information which they require to be able for them to plan and market their tourist strategies. Because that tourism, I believe, uses, well, not I believe, I know, uses information from the present ED forms, to compile information on tourism, obviously how many tourists come to Barbados every year, and maybe the average length of stay of a tourist from Europe as compared to Germany, as compared to Canada. This information, sir, as I said, would be accessible from JRCC and from the kiosks as well. And it is contained in the PNR, which is part of the APIS, which was given legislative effect last month. But it may very well have to be, again, sir, that some kind of memorandum of understanding may have to be formally put in place between the Ministry of Tourism and the JRCC, for the full and free flow without any difficulty whatsoever of this kind of information. So, sir, this process, sir, as I said, this legislative initiative is part of the thrust of this administration to ease the process of doing business, whether by residents or tourists, with government authorities across our island, sir. And this is what you will find, or the public of Barbados and the wider world will find, that this government is about easing business, making life easier, improving the quality of life for our people and for the people who visit our shores and for the people beyond who have contact with Barbados. Running a government, sir, that is not corrupt, sir. Very important, sir. And hence we look forward again to the integrity legislation soon coming before Parliament again out of the Select Committee, as the Attorney General, the Honourable Member for St. Joseph, has said it would within the next few months. Being transparent, accountable to the people of this country, by whose will and sufferance we are here in this Parliament, sir. And by running a caring government, unlike the callousness of the last administration, of running a competent government, a government, sir, that is 24/7 working in the interest and in the advancement of the people of this country. I'm obliged to you, sir. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to make a contribution to this